Welcome back to Management Development Unlocked. I am agog that you are here. I'm Eric Girard, CEO of Girard Training Solutions, a management development firm that focuses on helping new managers transform from high-performing individual contributors to outstanding people managers. And I also have an Amazon #1 best-selling book called Lead Like a Pro, The Essential Guide for New Managers. Today, I am mesmerized to have Brandon Birkmeyer with me. Brandon, welcome to the show. Who are you and what do you do?
Love all the fabulous descriptive words you're using
today.
You know,
there's a thing on the interwebs called thesaurus.com.
Gotta keep your game tight. I love it. I'm Brandon Birkmeyer. I am a former Madison Avenue agency executive. I worked on accounts like Coca-Cola and Apple. And 6 years ago, I left corporate and now I'm doing corporate training, speaking, and I wrote a book, and it's all about the topics of personal branding for corporate leaders. And that's what I'm doing today.
Right on. Well, let's dive right in and talk about the book. So can you start by giving us a 30,000-foot overview of your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a little bit of a letter to myself from, 6 to 10 years ago, which is, what are the skills that I could have used that would have catapulted me further and got me a seat at the table in a corporate environment? And the skills are really based on the skills of personal branding. So looking at what I think is a shame is that we aren't trained better to leverage a few key skill points. One is developing authority in our environment. So learning how to express yourself, learning how to communicate, and even create thought leadership pieces. Anything that I would say develops you authority in your area. The second is influence, the skills of influence. You look up to the CEOs and you're like, how do they develop those relationships with these amazing people? Why do all the best people know the best people, and how do I get into that circle? The skills of influence and relationship building. And then the third are the skills that have to do with building credibility, proof of performance. What can you point at and say, I did that? And I think if I had learned those skills much earlier on and started practicing them, then when the opportunities arose to be in the spotlight, to potentially compete for that seat at the table, the answer would have been obvious as to who to choose. And I think all of us could benefit from skills like this.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. And remind us again, what's the title of this book?
Yeah, I guess I should start with that. Not much of a branding guy if I don't. The book is called Front and Center Leadership, what does it say here? How leaders use personal branding to stand out and how you can too. And yeah, it's been a labor of love. And I'm hoping that the rising managers out there, the rising leaders, absorb it. And there's activities and skills, things that you can practice every day, real world stuff to slowly get better. And over time, have that preparation you need and practice you need to step into that limelight.
Cool. Well, why did you write Front and Center Leadership? What was at the core of your desire to write this book?
Yeah, there's, heart reasons and head reasons. The heart reasons are, after 17, 18 years working in these corporate ad agencies and building out programs, I realized that I was hitting a ceiling in my activity. And then I left corporate to do marketing consulting, and I hit the same ceiling. And the ceiling was that I had built a resume. I had a great resume of things I had done, but I hadn't built a reputation. And so I said, okay, I started studying things like how to have charisma, how to build a network, how to communicate, how to develop relationships, how to create content and thought leadership. And each of these along the way were skills that helped me build my business and build my reputation. But I was starting from zero. And it's been 6 years now, and it's still a work in progress. And that not having just a resume and not a reputation really was my motivation. I was like, man, if I could help other people get started on this earlier. I was 39 looking at 40, and you can do these things straight out of college or even earlier. The extra 20 years of experience, I think, would really set anyone apart. So I really was writing to my younger self and saying, how could I help that former me, that younger me, get ahead? So that was the motivation for it. And if I can help just one person be seen and stepped out and get past that reluctance. And I think we have a bit of a middle of the pack mentality. And I think it's for a good reason. It keeps us safe. You know, we stand in the middle and surround ourselves with other people and don't stick our toe out because you can get in trouble for standing out and saying the wrong thing or leading, and then the project goes awry and then it's your fault and you're the one, you know, holding the ticket. So we, for good reason, have this middle of the pack mentality, but it also makes you a commodity. And as someone in branding, you know, I love the idea of saying, instead of being a commodity, how do we leverage our human potential to be a brand, a personal brand, a human brand, and take a little bit of risk sometime, but in a prepared way so that when you do step out, it's not the first time. It's not without practice. It's not without some kind of preparation for what's to come, for having that spotlight on you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it reminds me of what I'm going to paraphrase Jerry Garcia. Don't just be the best at what you do. Be the only person who does what you do. And it sounds like there's kind of a parallel here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A funny stat. It was like 80% of our actions, and this is from a professor in the Roth Institute in Bremen. He said, he did some research. I found that 80% of our actions take place automatically without us having to even think about it. Our brains try to turn everything into a routine, and that thinking part is very time consuming. It burns energy. So anything we can do that we can make automatic, we're going to do. And I think those routines, they get comfortable for us. So the idea that if you can be aware of some of these habits that we have, that what I call reluctance, the reluctance to do some of these things that would put us out there, if we can break some of those routines and be aware that they're even there, suddenly the doors open to you investing in yourself, investing in personal development, investing in finding skills, and even identifying what are the skills I would need that, like, the people that I look up to, that I idolize, like, what do they have that I would love to have? Because it's not always just some natural born gift. It's usually practiced over time and a skill that anyone could acquire. Mm-hmm. They just haven't invested the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to work really hard at it. And then it looks easy, even though, you know, it took thousands and thousands of hours of practice. You're making it look easy to folks who are watching for the first time. Well, the audience for this show is new managers. So how do you see the principles in this book applying to the future of management development?
Yeah, I mean, it's really written exactly for them. And so for me, I think there's already a lot of information and training and great coaches and consultants who are teaching the skills of leadership, the skills of, you know, once you become a leader, these are the things that help you manage the team and lead best. What I wanted to do was take the things that I'm good at, the things that I've studied and learned, both in, you know, for brands and for now myself, and say, how do I apply that? And really, I realized it's the path to leadership that I could contribute to, the path to getting recognized and given the opportunity to lead, because I actually don't believe that we can always get better at the leadership skills, but I believe that there's a lot of leaders who have the skills already, but just haven't been recognized for those skills or chosen. And what happens is then the person who is the loudest or most, you know, like most brave, if you will, or the type A, they're the only ones that are given the opportunity. So how do we, you know, take what I would call reluctant leaders, and not in a bad way, you know, they're just not as, they're more polite and whatever you want to call it. How do we shine the light on them or give them an opportunity to say, here are some things that you could do that are going to put you in the conversation as well and put you on that path to leadership. And once you get there, like, I would love more leaders who already have those skills organically, that are natural communicators and consensus builders, that don't always get the stage. You know, they're happy to give it up to other people and let the light shine on other people. How do we get more of those people into the right positions? That's my heart. That's what I'm looking for. You know, as an extrovert married to an introvert, I can empathize with that. Because my wife would very much like to just stay off to the side, but she has amazing leadership qualities that don't often get recognized because she wants to stay in the background. She wants to support from behind. So that
resonates with me personally. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Well,
yeah, and I think there's a model for this, right? And like I mentioned, what I thought the kind of categories of skills were, but what I lay out in the book are 9 steps. I'm not going to go through them all today, right? Because it's like a short, it's not the longest podcast in the world. But there's 9 steps, and I bucket those steps into really 3 types of actions. The first is the actions of creating content. The second is building community, and the third is making an impact. The creating content part, I think that's jarring to managers. Like, I'm not out here to be an influencer and a creative. But really what I'm talking about is expressing yourself, finding ways to express your thoughts and communicate your ideas clearly. And I think the best way to do that is through practice, right? Through actually expressing yourself over and over again every week. We as podcasters have an advantage because every week we have to think of something to say, or as an interviewer, something to ask. And that practice becomes innate because we're doing it over and over and over again. So if we can get more people to work on those communication skills, and then that team building skill, how do you build relationships with people, not just people in your industry, but people of influence, and how do you become comfortable talking to a CMO for the first time, or someone who you might not think is, they're like at a level that you don't feel comfortable with because you just haven't been in a room with them. How do you develop those skills? And then the third, that like making an impact piece, for me, it's you have to have proof of performance. So everyone at any stage, even when I was an assistant, I could have built some credibility just by making an impact in little ways. I could have created little resources, or every time I took on a task with an Excel sheet, I could have written that process down, or brought in some research, or done read the news and brought articles to my team, whatever it might have been. There's little ways you can make an impact. So those are the 3 categories within these 9 steps. But there's skills that entrepreneurs that I've met do all the time. They're out there leveraging their personality, leveraging their relationships, and they have to prove value. They have to prove value to people, or they won't have any customers. So I'm like, let's apply these skills and take them into a corporate environment where they're not talked about.
Outstanding. Good stuff. Well, moving on, let's talk a little bit about who this book is for. So you mentioned one audience, for example, the new manager. Who else?
It's definitely geared mostly towards the new manager. The stories themselves apply to anyone that I would say where they are the face of their business, where your reputation is the thing that is going to drive your success or not. And I think that's a lot of us. But of course, there's some businesses that this isn't exactly for. Not every person needs to put themselves out there in this type of way. And it's fine if the business is the lead, right? So not every entrepreneur is going to need to be a thought leader in their industry. I would argue that they might need a piece of this. They might still need great relationships, but maybe they don't need to express themselves because they have someone else that does that. They have a sales team or whatever it might be. But I would argue that most businesses, especially the ones that are where you are the face of your business, the consultants, the speakers, accountants, financial advisors, the knowledge business, they would benefit the most. And that's why a lot of them already are doing this. But they don't always have a footprint or a plan. So this lays out the plan. This lays out step by step. How do you get there? And in every step, there's exercises to take, exactly what to do, a checklist, things to fill in and do. And then there's also interviews with 9 different thought leaders on how they did each of these steps. And those stories, it's not just what Brandon was thinking. It was these are the people that I found through the interviews on my show have something really thoughtful to contribute to each of these steps. So that's what I thought would have been useful for me back then, and what I think would be useful to both rising managers and reputation-based businesses.
Nice. Well, you're speaking my love language when you're talking about a book that has activities and exercises and ways to apply what you've learned. I think that that's so key, because so often folks will publish these 300-page tomes of business wisdom and knowledge, and it's just a slog to get through. So I look forward to looking through your book and seeing how it's different in that way. What is your favorite book-related topic to discuss?
So in my book, I like talking about all of it. I could talk for days, right? That's why I have a podcast. The thing that I'd want to share with your listeners here, because they might be like, this might be me, and they're like still on the, on the fence about it. What I think is what created a lot of awareness for me when I started creating this, I think it's not just, hey, how do you build a personal brand? I think a lot of it is, how do we overcome that reluctance? So for me, I like talking about this yin and yang between initiative and reluctance. The things that hold us back versus the things that, we're motivated to move forward. And I've noticed in my life, there are moments in time, I don't have to take initiative every day and every moment, but at the right moments, when I've taken initiative, it's changed my life. There are moments that I had that, 20 seconds of insane courage, like they talk about in that movie, We Bought a Zoo, right? At 20 seconds that you just said, this just feels like the right thing. I'm going to do this thing that's usually out of my comfort zone. And for me, an example of that is, me and my wife now, at the time, girlfriend, had split up. She moved to New York. I stayed in Los Angeles, and we were apart for 6 months. And when it was getting close to our anniversary, I like, obviously was feeling like that I was missing something in my life. And for a moment of just crazed courage, I said, I should send her a message. And I hadn't talked to her in a few months. And I sent her a message via AOL Instant Messenger. This is all, obviously dating me to back in the day. But I sent her a message, and it just said, "What's up?" And I hadn't really thought about it, because as a man, I hadn't really thought through any of my actions, just beyond getting the first thing done. But that message changed my life. And then in the middle of that conversation, it was a Wednesday. I was like, "What are you doing Friday at midnight?" And she said, "Why?" I said, "Well, it's the first plane I can get on to come to New York and see you and figure this thing out." And 2 weeks later, I was out there having job interviews. I moved there very shortly after. A year later, I proposed in a helicopter flying over New York City on the same kind of crazy, last minute decision. And a year later, we had our first child, and we've been married ever since. So it's those little moments that if I had just not gone with that gut instinct, my life could have gone in a completely different direction. And there's so many examples of this. And I bet your audience can think of examples for themselves where they took the initiative because of a gut feeling, or maybe not. Maybe it's just something that they said, let's do it. That changed their lives too. And I'm curious if you have stories like that. If you had something in your life where you took the initiative and you felt that reluctance, or you jumped to it. If you don't mind me asking you that same question.
I would say kind of a similar story to yours. The way I met my wife was on eHarmony. So we met online. And I read her profile and read about her, and just was like, ooh, that's it. That's the one. And I almost chased her away because I was over eager. And so I remember asking her, like, don't get out your running shoes. Like, don't run away. Hear me out. And it turned out for the best. Now we've got twin 15-year-old daughters, and we've been married for 17 years, and it's all good.
Yeah, it's like in our personal life, it's true. In our professional lives, it's true. When you put yourself up for that promotion or that job, or you change jobs, or you move to get an advantage, like flying across the country, like picking up your whole family, moving where you don't have roots, things like that. We've all have stories where we made these decisions and we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. It wasn't certain. There was some risk involved. And I think what stops us a lot of time from doing it, because we also probably have things that we could have done and we can't look back, right? We can't regret it because it's too late. You don't know what the outcome would have been, but maybe there would have been another advantage that you missed. And I realized there's three kinds of reluctance when I was trying to assess through this, how do I get people to take initiative? And I think if we can be aware of the types of reluctance, it's actually easier to take initiative. So for me, there's three types. One is what I call classic reluctance. Now this is, you have a good reason, right? You're like, I don't want to because, and it could be anything. Like, think about your daily life. Like, you're going to a restaurant. I don't want to, I'm not in the mood for that food, or I just don't feel like driving that far. I'd rather eat at home. You have a good reason. That's totally fine. There's another type of reluctance, which I like to call thoughtful indecision, right? It's, I'm not sure yet. I need a little time to weigh the options, make a pros and cons list, right? And then the analysis paralysis sets in. That's me. I'm very guilty of that. I'm the person that I need 6 months to make a decision sometimes, even if the outcome isn't huge. Even if the odds aren't in, high stakes, I still sometimes can overanalyze things. But recognizing that has made me sometimes step back and say, is this a decision I need to overanalyze? Should I just make a decision and see what happens? And the third type I'd like to call agreeableness. And this is where, the consensus makers come in. These are the people who are like, well, what do you think? What do you think? Why don't we all take a vote? Let's come to a mutual decision. And that's great. All these things, you don't have to look at them as good or bad things. They're just natural things that we do. The problem I see with agreeableness for certain types of decisions is that you're not exactly always getting what you might need at that time. If all you're doing is being agreeable, you may not voice your opinion. You may be overlooked for something. And maybe that day you needed to fill your cup. Maybe that day you needed to advocate for yourself and not be reluctant. So I think all of these things happen in our daily lives in different ways. And if we can be more aware of them, then we can say, you know what? When are these types of moments higher stakes for me where I'm going to need to maybe advocate a little bit more for myself or be more decisive versus indecisive?
Well, Brandon, you are certainly full of excellent insights, and I really appreciate it. This has been really, really interesting. So with that, I think I'd like to wind it down. How can people find you if they want to learn more?
So the easiest way is to go to brandsonbrands.com/books, and you can check out the new book that's come out. Also, you can type in Brandon Birkmeyer. You'll find me there. I've, through the personal branding process, put myself all over the interwebs. But Brands on Brands is usually the easiest place.
Okay, perfect. Well, folks, thanks again for listening to another episode of this podcast. Please subscribe to the show and connect with me on LinkedIn. Pick up my book, Lead Like a Pro, The Essential Guide for New Managers, available on Amazon. And if you email me at eric@gerardtrainingsolutions.com, I'll put you in the drawing for a free copy. If you'd like to chat about how I can help you or your new managers, please drop me a line via my website, gerardtrainingsolutions.com. And with that, thanks again, Brandon, and we will catch you all on the next one. Bye-bye.